Here we are, moving on to Sutra 3 in Section 3, Vibhūti Pāda of the Yoga Sutras. Tad artha-mātra-nirbhāsaṁ svarūpa-śūnyam iva samādhi. Tad artha-mātra-nirbhāsaṁ svarūpa-śūnyam iva samādhi. The same, the object, the thing being meditated upon, only shining or appearing therein, true or essential form, empty, void, cipher, as if samādhi, trance. The same contemplation when there is consciousness only of the object of meditation and not of itself, the mind, is samādhi. Now, as we come to the last stage of the concentration of the mind, this marks the culmination of the previous preparation to make it fit to dive into the realm of realities which lie hidden behind the phenomenal world. The subject of samādhi has been dealt with thoroughly in Section 1, but in that section, its more general and deeper aspects were considered. In this present context, it is therefore necessary to deal only with its introductory aspects, especially with its relation to dharana and dhyana. On account of the unusual manner in which the subject of samādhi has been dealt with by Patanjali, it will be necessary for the student to study carefully its various aspects several times before he can grasp its essential nature and technique. But the time and mental energy which he spends will be worthwhile, for he will acquire in this manner an understanding of the essential technique of yoga, the only technique which can unlock the gates of the world of reality. And when he says to revisit it several times, I think it's really best to meditate on these sutras. So you take them one at a time, and this is what I used to do anyway. I would memorize the Sanskrit and I would recite it in my head like a mantra and go into meditation that way. Or if I couldn't memorize the Sanskrit because it was too challenging for my mind at the time, I would memorize the transliteration of it and use that as a mantra and go into meditation that way. But you're still really focusing and shutting out, right? You're going through this process, you're shutting out any other thoughts. And anytime you notice your mind wandering, you're bringing it back to whatever the object is. And in this case, I'm talking about the object being the sutra, right? When the state of dhyana has been well established and the mind can hold the object of meditation without any distractions, it is possible to know the object much more intimately than in ordinary thinking. But even then, a direct knowledge of its very essence is not obtained, and the reality hidden within the object seems to elude the yogi. He is like a general who has reached the very gates of the fort, which he has to conquer, but the gates are closed, and he is unable to enter the fort. What is standing between him and the reality of the object which he wants to know? Section 3, Sutra 3, gives an answer to this question. The same contemplation when there is consciousness only of the object of meditation and not of itself, the mind, is samādhi. So now we're not, I'll see what he has to say and then maybe I'll have more to say about it. The mind itself is preventing the realization of the very essence of the object of meditation. The mind gets obsessed with itself, right? Gets obsessed with its own movement, with its own thoughts. When you start focusing it and being like, no, I want you to stay here. Stay on this, not on your own natural tendency to move, right? We're like really steering it and making it move the way we want it to. All the distractions have been completely eliminated and the consciousness is fully focused on the object of meditation. How does the mind interfere with the realization of the very essence of the object? By interposing consciousness of itself between the reality hidden behind the object and the consciousness of the yogi. It is this self-consciousness or subjectivity, pure and simple, which serves as a veil to keep it separated from the object and to hide the reality that he is seeking. To understand how consciousness of the mind of itself can become a bar to further progress, let us recall how this self-consciousness interferes with the intellectual work of the highest order. A great musician is able to create his best productions when he loses himself completely in his work. An inventor solves his greatest problems when he is not conscious of solving any problem. It is at such moments that these people get their inspirations and contact with what they are seeking, provided, of course, they have mastered the technique and their mind is fully concentrated. So a lot of people refer to this as flow, right? It is the disappearance of self-consciousness which somehow opens the door to a new world which they cannot enter normally. Something similar, though at a much higher level, takes place when dhyana passes into samadhi and the gate which leads into the world of realities opens. Patanjali calls this disappearance of the mind's awareness of itself as svarūpa-śūnyam eva. Svarūpa-śūnyam eva. The mind's own form or essential nature disappears, as it were. Let us examine this phrase carefully because each word in it is significant. What is svarūpa? Everything in manifestation has two forms. An external form expressing its superficial and non-essential nature, which is called rupa, and an internal form, which constitutes the very essence or substance of its true nature, which is called its svarūpa. In the case of the mind in the state of dhyana, the rupa is the pratyaya, or the object of meditation. It is through this that the mind finds expression. The svarūpa is the residual consciousness of its own action or role in the process of dhyana and is essentially the subjective nature of the mind. I'm going to read that again because it's a little tricky. The svarūpa is the residual consciousness of its own action or role in the process of dhyana and is essentially the subjective nature of the mind. So your mind is aware that it's concentrating itself and trying to get beyond its own metacognition, right? Its own sense that it's doing something. The one doing the doing. This consciousness steadily becomes weaker as dharana passes into dhyana, and the consciousness of the mind in dhyana increases. But still, it is present, even though in a weak form, in all stages of dhyana, and it is only when it disappears completely that dhyana passes into samadhi. The word śūnyam means a void or cipher, and here it must be interpreted as cipher, because it is a question of reducing the residual self-awareness to the vanishing point and not of emptying anything to the utmost limit. Getting right down to the pinnacle of the point. Is that the right word? Pinnacle of the point? What is the word for that most pointed, the most pointed point? The point of the point. The very point of the point. The pointiest point of the point. All right, stop being silly, Melissa. In fact, as the objects of meditation continue to fill the mind completely, there can be no question of emptying the mind. Svarūpa-śūnyam therefore means reducing the self-awareness or the subjective role of the mind to the utmost limit. Lest the student may imagine that the svarūpa really disappears when the samadhi takes the place of dhyana, the author adds the word eva, which means as if. The svarūpa only seems to disappear, but does not in reality because when the samadhi comes to an end, it manifests again immediately. The mind is always waiting to come back in. And it's like, hold on, okay, you can come back in now. The question as to how it is possible to know the innermost nature of an object of meditation by fusing the mind with it is a very interesting one and has been dealt with fully in considering Section 1, Sutra 41. Let's go back and revisit that one. 42 was a really long one, wasn't it? Section 1, Sutra 41. In the case of one whose chitta vrittis has been almost annihilated, fusion or entire absorption in one another of the cognizer, cognition, and cognized is brought about as in the case of a transparent jewel resting on a colored surface. You remember that one? Okay, where was I here? Oh, it will suffice to point out here that the apparent disappearance of the self-awareness means really dissolution of the subject-object relationship and their fusion in consciousness. With the disappearance of the mental svarūpa, a faculty higher than the intellect comes into play, and the perception of the reality hidden behind the object takes place through the instrumentality of this faculty which perceives by becoming one with the object of perception, the perceiver, the object of perception, and perception itself. I threw the self in there. And perception becomes fused in one state. Let me read that again. Actually, I'm going to go back. With the disappearance of the mental svarūpa, a faculty higher than the intellect comes into play, and the perception of the reality hidden behind the object takes place through the instrumentality of this faculty which perceives by becoming one with the object of perception. So it's almost like he's saying that it's a particular ability or capacity of the mind. It's its own thing, the capacity to perceive itself. Hidden behind the object takes place, the perceives by becoming one with the object of perception, right? The perceiver, the object of perception, and perception becomes fused in one state. When the self-awareness has disappeared, what is left in the mind? Only the object of meditation can remain for all kinds of... Let me start again. When the self-awareness has disappeared, what is left in the mind? Only the object of meditation can remain, for all kinds of distractions have to be eliminated before the state of dhyana can be firmly established. This is the meaning of the phrase artha-mātra-nirbhāsaṁ. The phrase tad eva means the same and is used here to emphasize the fact that samadhi is merely an advanced phase of dhyana and not a new technique. The only difference between them, as we have seen, is the absence of the mental self-awareness which makes the object shine in a new light. Absence of mental self-awareness. Okay, so now I'm going back to this and saying, no, that's not. Perception of the reality hidden behind the object takes place through the instrumentality of this faculty which perceives by becoming one with the object of perception. So the self-consciousness and the self-awareness that perception is actually taking place disappears, and you become fused with the thing that you're perceiving, the object of perception. Right? The only difference between them, as we have seen, is the absence of the mental self-awareness which makes the object shine in a new light. Okay. The difference between the three phases of the same process which culminates in samadhi may be represented in the following way. If A is the object chosen for samyama, and B, C, D, E, etc. are distractions, then the content of the mind at regular intervals of successive moments in the three phases may be represented by the following series of pratyayas present in the mind. The circle around the letters represents the mental self-awareness referred to above. It will be seen that the frequency of distractions goes on decreasing in dharana, and frequency and degree of mental self-awareness goes on decreasing in dhyana. In samadhi, there is complete freedom both from distractions and self-awareness, and the object alone remains in the field of consciousness. It is true that further changes are possible, but These changes are connected with the object itself and do not affect the two conditions which determine the state of samadhi. But these further developments have been discussed in connection with Section 1, Sutras 42 through 49. Okay? It will be seen that the transformations which take place in dharana, dhyana, and samadhi are purely mental phenomenon and are related to consciousness. The mind has already been disconnected from the body, and whatever takes place in the realm of the mind cannot be judged by the condition of the body. The physiological functions go on perfectly, but there's no response of the body either to the world outside or inside. This lack of response to outer stimuli in the physical body in the state of samadhi makes many people mistake ordinary trance for samadhi. But mere trance cannot be a proof of the attainment of samadhi. The body becomes unresponsive in sleep or under the influence of anesthetic or drugs. It also becomes unresponsive when, in the case of psychics, the subtler vehicles withdraw from the physical body and consciousness begins to function in the subtler world next to the physical. In all such cases, the body is inert, but the lower mind is functioning partially or fully in the next subtler vehicle. It is still under the full domination of distractions as before. The mental processes leading up to samadhi take place in the lower mental body and require the quiescence of the lower vehicles. Therefore, the fact of a person being in real samadhi is determined solely by the condition of his mind and not at all by the inertness of the physical body. It is necessary to draw attention to these obvious facts because those who are not well versed in the philosophy of yoga and dabble in lower psychism generally confuse the inertness of the physical body with samadhi, and a person who can manage to remain unconscious for any length of time is regarded as a great yogi! ! This condition of mere inertness is generally referred to as jada samadhi and has really no relation with true samadhi, although outwardly they appear very much alike. And we talked about this in a previous one, I think in the first section. Yeah. A person who comes out of true samadhi brings with him the transcendent knowledge, wisdom, peace, and strength of the inner life, while a person who comes out of jada samadhi is no wiser than a person who comes out of sleep. Sometimes, when he is psychic, he may be able to bring down into the physical brain clear or confused memory of some of his experiences on the next solar plane, but there is nothing remarkable or reliable about these experiences, and certainly there is nothing in common with the transcendent knowledge which is gained in true samadhi. The extent of ignorance prevailing with regard to these things is sometimes amazing. Some time ago, an article was published in a well-known Hindi journal dealing with the different stages of samadhi. In this article, we're given a series of photographs of a yogi supposed to be passing into different stages of samadhi, one after another. The series of photographs, as far as could be seen, merely showed an increasing dullness of the eyes, but what was astounding was that they showed more and more physical light coming out of the physical body in the advanced stages of samadhi. As if the light which dawns in the consciousness of the yogi in samadhi can be photographed! But such is the power of ignorance to distort and vulgarize the highest truths of life and to consider everything in terms of the physical, which is the only part of life which is tangible, and visible to the common man. Okay. We're going to stop for today. The next one is Sutra 4. The three taken together constitute samyama. And we'll do that 1, 4, 5, and 6 in the next video. Okay? Thank you for joining me today. Until next time.